Okay, so my name is Laura. I'm one of the librarians here at the Thunder Bay Public Library, and I'm going to be talking to you today um, during this program that we're calling Read This Next. And what this is a book recommendation program. So basically that means that if you're, as the title says, if you're wondering what to read next, then we're going to make some suggestions for you. We're going to go through and talk about different books that we are suggesting specifically based around the theme of Pride, because June is Pride Month. This is one of the programs we're doing to celebrate Pride at the Thunder Bay Public Library.
All right, and I'm Nicole. I'm a library technician at mostly Waverly Library, and I do a lot of teen programs, and I'm usually out at the Pride events too with my coworkers, and sometimes Laura's there. It's lots of fun. So I guess we'll get started. So first we'll talk about what we've done in the past for Pride. We've had a lot of fun things. This year we're going to be doing next week a story time. Miss Patience, for all of you who love and know Miss Patience, is doing a story time on June 17th at 10:30 a.m. She's going to be reading Prince and Knight, which is a super cute book that involves dragons and a prince and a knight, as the title implies. And that'll be on Facebook Live as well, so you can find it there next week. And we've also done drag queen story times, which are always a blast. The first one we did was in May 2019, and we had about 81 people. It was really great, and they did a cute little painting with their hands on it, and we have it displayed up in the children's area, which is really cute. That was with Lady Fantasia La Premiere and Ms. Molly Poppins, and they just did one last week too with Pride. So if you want to, you can check theirs out as well. What else do we have going on? We have tons of LGBTQ films available, and we'll be sharing a list of those on our social media. A lot of them are from the NFB movie database. Yeah. And then if you're looking for more stuff that we're doing, we have an online space on our website called Online Activities, and there's a section highlighting all the Pride celebrations from around the world, Canada, international. It has free shows, performances, readings for families and adults, so all ages can hang out there. So all you have to do is go to our website, click the red Online Activities button, and then look for the LGBTQ category, and you'll be good to go. Another thing we do every year is we update our book lists for Pride. This year it's a little different because we're not in the branch as much. So, well, the patrons aren't in the branch as much yet. So we have big lists on Cloud Library. We usually try and do current event ones. So we have some about Black Lives Matter right now. And we also have some about Pride Month. And we're going to highlight some of those titles in a bit though, so don't worry. And we also have an ongoing list of YA books from our teen section, and you can find those on the website. It's just www.tbpl.ca/teens-read, and you'll be able to find it there. We have the past ones up there too, but 2019 is missing. I'm trying to find it. I'll work on it. Yeah, and lastly, we usually go to the park. Last year was on Bay and Algoma, which was lots of fun. I think I got a sunburn. We usually make lots of buttons. So for example, we have they, them, theirs, and we have Pantastic. And we also usually have like really fun ones like It Ain't No Lie, Baby, and Bye, 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 which is usually the first one to go because it's amazing. Yeah, so Laura, did you want to talk about LGBTQ lit and how it's changed over the years?
Yes. So when we were thinking about doing this and talking about literature and Pride Month, I wanted to take the opportunity because I just love talking about all these sorts of things. I think it's really interesting. And if you are a reader at all, you might find it interesting too. There's been a ton of changes in the kind of the audience and what sort of books are available in queer literature, specifically over the last 10 years, which is kind of neat because I actually started working at the library 10 years ago. It was 2010 when I started. So you have to like cast your mind way back into the deep past. through the mist of time to 2010. And when I first started working here at the library, what part of my job was buying the YA books. So I knew that I wanted to make sure that we had whatever was out there, whatever was well reviewed, whatever our patrons might want to read. But one of the things that I found when I started really looking into what was available was how many of the YA books that were out then that were issue books, like they were about, there was a ton of coming out narratives, and quite a few of them were like sad stories, hard to read, tough stories, coming out stories. They didn't usually end well. There were, people getting kicked out of their homes, or just they weren't necessarily very happy coming out stories ever. And there wasn't a ton of them. And what was available was very often about boys, men, teenagers. There wasn't very many books that dealt with had a female protagonist. And over time, we've seen like a huge change in that. It's taken time. Obviously, 10 years is not a short period of time when you're looking for books to read or looking for representation. But we have reached a point now where there are more and more books that are, they're not just coming out stories, or if there is a coming out element, it's not the focus of the whole thing, or it's able to be just a small part because the coming out isn't a huge deal. It's just one element of what happens in the story, and then things keep going. And instead of there being so many stories that are primarily about, written by, and often, and about gay boys, teens, there's tons more that are about girls, about young women who are dealing with different issues. And instead of just being, contemporary realistic books, which is, exactly what it sounds like, books that are happening today, and there's no fun magic or anything exciting going on. Because that used to be, mostly where you would find stories about being queer. Now there's actually fun genre stuff. Like, I don't know why it is ridiculous that it took so long that there was books about fairies and kings and queens and magical kingdoms, but for some reason the idea of like a king or queen being gay was like, that's a step too far. Fairies are fine, but like a gay fairy, what? But now we've reached the point where that's okay, like there's, and not even just like it's always been okay, but it's okay to the point where the publishing industry has published those books, and they've been able to find an audience, and there's been critical, like positive critical attention. And so at the list that we make every year of like what's come out in the past year, recommended reads, they get longer and longer because every year there's more and more books being published that fit into these categories. It's just really neat to see, especially like we look at some of the earlier lists, and it's like, okay, well, we can put this on an LGBTQ list because the main character, say their father is coming out. So it wasn't even centered really around the queer character. It was almost more peripheral, but there was so little out there that it was like, no, well, this is content, so we're going to make sure we include it. But now we've reached the point where like we want to center more of the stories where it's the main characters who are a part of those communities, who have the orientation or the identity, and the orientation and identities that are being represented in these books has had a huge change too. So originally, like I've said, started very much with the gay characters, and then they were like, here's some lesbians as a treat, and then it's kind of spread out from there.
A little.
Just a little. But now there's more and more as time has gone by, and now we've reached the point where like not only are there gay and lesbian characters, but there's also more and more trans characters, and there's more and more, there'll be books that come out with intersex characters or asexual characters or non-binary characters or genderqueer characters or two-spirited characters, and it just kind of keeps growing, which is really awesome. And to the point where one of the things we do when we make these book lists is I tried to alternate different years between making the list be, here's a bunch of books that fall into different genres, and then the next year I would do it by orientation and identity, so that if someone sorry, notes. If someone specifically wanted to read a book with a character who had the same identity as them, if they were looking for that representation, I wanted them to be able to find it easily.
Mm-hmm.
And it was back in, let's see, the first year I was able to do that, 2016, I was able to have a list that had like, there's like over a dozen books that were just asexual, aromantic, or demi-romantic. Like, it's so neat. When it used to be like, if that's how you were identifying or you were just learning about it, you wouldn't find that in YA, or it would be really hard to find. There would be very little. And now it's like, well, here's a whole list for you. I can give you this whole list. Here's a whole list of these gender nonconforming characters, bisexual characters, trans characters. And more of these books are written by hashtag own voices.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is there's been a movement in the publishing industry where we think about how the person who is writing the story, are they a member of that community? Have they experienced that? Are they part of those? Do they have that identity? And not to say that, no one is saying you can't write about something that you haven't lived through yourself. But what I think that hashtag is saying is that there's a particular insight and value that the own voices can bring to a narrative, to a book. And so that's something that we're able to offer more and more too. Here's a book with a trans character, and it's written by someone who is trans.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in 2010, like the most well-known books about trans characters were all written by cis people, like cis women or cis men. And it's not like that anymore. We can actually have that real, genuine representation that is coming from such a personal, actual space. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I think actually most of our authors on the list this year are all own voices, except for maybe one or two, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. It is. It's really great. And there's more and more intersectionality. Almost an intersexuality. No.
Yeah.
That, like, there's that too, but intersectionality, which basically means that, not only is the story about someone who is trans, it's about someone who is trans and they are Indigenous. Mm-hmm. Or it's not only a story about someone who's bisexual, they're bisexual and they're deaf, maybe, or whatever the example might be. Because that's how real people are, right? You're not just one thing, you're going to be multiple things. And as the literature is developed, there's more and more opportunities the writers are giving more and more opportunities for the readers to see themselves represented in different ways, and more thoroughly. And Melinda Lowe, who is a YA author, who has a really amazing blog where she talks about diversity quite a lot. One of the things that she said on there was, like, it's not until we can tell stories about anything, there's no limitation on the type of stories we can tell, that we can really, we're really allowing these LGBTQ characters to be fully human, right? And as long as there's this restriction on what kind of stories we can tell, they're not given the opportunity of everyone else, right? So if we want, and we do, we want, them to be allowed to be fully human, then this was the direction we needed to go in. Yeah, so there's been a lot of changes. I've kind of run through a whole bunch really quickly, but it's really exciting to see. And it's, for myself, like, looking back now, I can see these really distinctive trends in how much representation has increased and the sort of amazing titles that are out there now, and how, like, someone can come to me and say, oh, I really love mysteries. And I can give them a whole bunch of different mystery books. And in that list of books that I'm giving them, there's going to be books that have queer characters that are, whether they're main characters or they're side characters or whatever. Because now that the representation has increased so much, it's just the depth that we're able to offer is so improved. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to make it seem like we've done it, because it's all over. We've solved it. Yeah. Because we haven't. There still is definitely areas that are, that there's way more representation than others. There still is more representation of gay characters, I think, than pretty much any other, although lesbian's been creeping up there a little bit. There's not as many um, authors who are Black or Indigenous people of color. There's not as many books written by those authors, but things are improving, which is what you want. Like, you want the slope to be going up, and
Mm-hmm.
especially right now, like in Pride Month, and with all the issues that are going on and the protests with Black Lives Matter in the States and here as well. Um, it's nice to be able to say that what we're offering, like what the library is able to offer, the book list we're able to put out into the world, we're doing our best to make sure that we are as representational as possible. And the publishing industry is allowing us to, at least we are able to make some offering out there. It's there's always room for improvement, but um, it's a pretty exciting change from what things were like not that long ago, really.
For sure. Yeah. So
Yeah.
do we want to move on to our a couple of highlights then?
Yes. Now we're
Okay.
going to talk about some of the books that are available, actually, some of these really great, diverse reads that I was mentioning.
Mm-hmm. And we have pretty pictures. So the
You have
first
that
one
too.
is Untamed by Glennon Doyle. So these again are you can find them all on Cloud Library. And if you have any issues with getting into your account, I believe the email is comments@tvpl.ca and they'll help you out.
We should say, actually, Nicole, we've both been saying, I think Cloud Library. Cloud Library, if you're not familiar, is our
Oh.
platform for reading ebooks and e-audiobooks
Mm-hmm.
through the library. Yes. Okay, carry on.
Good reminder.
Yeah.
Okay, so Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Doyle is an activist, a speaker, a philanthropist, and Untamed offers a memoir wrapped in a wake-up call that reveals how women can reclaim their true, untamed selves by breaking free of the restrictive expectations and cultural conditioning that leaves them feeling dissatisfied and lost. And this one is a New York Times bestseller, and it sounds very interesting. More of a nonfiction kind of story.
Yes, it's been like all over bestseller lists and lots of awards. Like, it seems to be it sounds like a really incredible read. I would encourage everyone to check it out.
Absolutely. Next up, we have. Oh, I moved too fast. This is the next one. Here we go. Girl, woman, other comes from one of Britain's most celebrated writers of color, Bernardine Evaristo. It's a magnificent portrayal of the intersections of identity among an interconnected group of Black British women. So it's also an excellent Black Lives Matter read. It's won the Booker Prize, the Orwell Prize. It's the Orwell Prize nominee for political fiction for Longlist, and it also was the shortlist for the Women's Prize for Fiction, and it was the Goodreads Choice Award nominee for fiction. So it's got lots of accolades there too with that one.
Sorry about that, Nicole. My
That's
computer was
okay.
starting to die, so I just had to duck out and plug it in.
You didn't plug in?
I didn't. It got knocked out, but now I'm back. So carry on.
Excellent. Now we're actually going to get to This Town Sleeps by Dennis E. Staples. I really like this one. I don't know if it's supposed to be like Google Map points, but that's kind of what it reminds me of. So this book sounds really neat, and I'm not sure what genre it would fit into, but it's described like this: engaging in a secret affair with a closeted white man, an Ojibwe from a northern Minnesota reservation navigates small town discrimination before a ghost leads him to the grave of a basketball star whose murder becomes linked to a local legend. Also a great Indigenous author read, but ghosts and basketball players, like, can't wait. Sounds good. And then lastly, on our highlight reel, we have a YA1 called Pet
Look at that
by.
cover.
I know, isn't
So
it
neat.
pretty? I love it. And this one's by Akwake Emazi, and it's a National Book Award finalist and a Stonewall Book Award winner, and pretty much the 2019 Best Book of the Year in like everywhere. So Apple chapters, Amazon, pretty much everywhere. So Akwake makes their young adult debut in the story of a transgender, selectively nonverbal girl named Jam and the monster that finds its way into their universe. Jam's hometown is portrayed as a utopia, a world that is post-bigotry and violence where monsters have been eradicated. Jam accidentally allows a figure named Pet with ram's horns, metallic figures, and metal claws to pull itself out of a painting her mother made. Pet has come to hunt a human monster. Together, Jam, Pet, and Redemption, Jam's best friend, embark on a quest to discover the crime and vanquish the monster. But what's really cool is Jam's language is alternating. Oh, that's a hard word. Alternatingly voiced and signed. So Imazi, the author, is also Igbo, a ethnic group from Nigeria, and Tamil, an ethnic group from Sri Lanka and Tamil Nadu. And so she uses Igbo phrases in the family's interactions, which are described as lovingly, which is really cute. And I think it would be really a great read for fans of speculative fiction. And it sounds kind of horror a little bit, but it looks good. It looks good.
So the last thing really we wanted to do was recommend a couple of books that we've actually read ourselves that are also available through Cloud Library, and they're featured on these Pride Month shelves that are in Cloud Library. So I read two for this first one and kind of grouped them together because they're both the same genre. So these are thrillers. And the first one is called Keep This to Yourself by Tom Ryan. There you go. Another good cover.
Ooh.
Yes, ooh, indeed. And it's got a small town serial killer, 1 year later mystery happening. It's really good. It's one of those, it reminds me a lot of so many of the other sort of thrillers that you're reading right now, especially for adults, that are, you know, there's people are, it's a quiet town, but people have secrets. And what are those secrets? What happens when those secrets explode? Like that sort of thing. It's that same sort of thing, only this book happens to be YA actually. So it's meant for a young adult audience, but honestly, in this instance, the only real difference is it's shorter than a lot of the adult books that have similar themes. I think that any adult who likes to read those sort of like suspenseful domestic mysteries would really enjoy it. And the other one that's similar is called The Truth About Keeping Secrets, and it's by Savannah Brown. There you are. Not as beautiful a cover, still nice, but you know, not as fancy. And in this one, our main character's father is unexpectedly dead. There's been an accident, and she doesn't really believe that it's an accident. So it follows her as she tries to investigate who might be responsible for her father's death. And also as she and her family are kind of trying to pick up the pieces a little bit and come to terms with what's happened in their lives. And in both of these, our main characters, in Keep This to Yourself, our main character is gay, and he's out. You know, it's not a coming out story. Definitely, his family already knows. People know. It's just a thing. It's just another part of who he is. And then with the other story, The Truth About Keeping Secrets, there is a reference to an experience she had when she was first starting high school, where she was outed by another girl. But we kind of we're catching up with Savannah, we're catching up with Sydney is the main character's name, where she's already, you know, that's in her past, and she still has some scars from how that went down. But the book isn't primarily about that. It's primarily about her solving what this mystery is with her father, and connections with other students, how they might be connected to her father. It's the same sort of thing, sort of twisty, family mysteries, secrets. Both really good. I highly recommend.
All right. Now that I'm hearing your descriptions of those ones, the one that I wanted to recommend was The Devouring Grey by Christine Lynn Herman, which I read last week, and it's very similar to the ones that you're describing, except it has more of a magic element.
Yeah, there's no magic in mine.
No, exactly. So The Devouring Grey is basically about a girl named Violet she and her mom moved back to a small town called Four Paths, which was built and saved from the Gray, a mysterious monster wreaking havoc on their town. The town was saved by the four founding families. Violet finds out, of course, she's one of the founding families, and all the kids have magic powers. Ooh. And they have to use these powers to protect the town from the Gray. But lots of family secrets, very hard to figure out what's going on.
Sure.
Lots of drama, really liked it. Also, tons of bisexual representation. Like you said, not the main point of the story. I think she just mentions it in passing at one point when they're talking about dating people, and she's like, nope, nope, didn't work for me with this one, and then it's completely moved on to something else. But a lot of talk about grief and moving on from character death in this one. So keep that in mind. It's got a lot of grief.
Interesting. That is very similar. Like grief is a huge thing in both of the ones I talked about too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you don't want like a big downer.
Yeah, it wasn't super downery. It was kind of more like Stranger Things, where it was like the Gray lives in a parallel universe to the town, and they have to like. Sure. It was cool.
So my second/third suggestion. It's so good. It's really delightful. I do not love that cover personally, so don't hold it against the book if you also are not a big fan.
Like a kid's book.
It's not great. It's not the best cover. Okay, but don't hold that against it. It's an amazing book. It's so good. It's just amazing. It's contemporary fantasy. So it's sort of like a version of our world. And there is magic. People have like, in addition to regular humans, there's also people who are, like pixies or sprites or shapeshifters or whatever it may be. And I'm just going to read you some of the description of the book because it's so delightful. Okay. Linus Baker leads a quiet, solitary life. At 40, he lives in a tiny house with a devious cat. Like my interjection here, but like who doesn't love a cat, right? So with his devious cat and his old records. As a caseworker at the department in charge of magical youth, he spends his days overseeing the well-being of children in government-sanctioned orphanages. And then this is where it gets exciting. When Linus is unexpectedly summoned by extremely upper management, he's given a curious and highly classified assignment: travel to Mysterious Island Orphanage, where 6 dangerous children reside: a gnome, a sprite, a wyvern, an unidentifiable green blob, a were Pomeranian, and the Antichrist.
What?
Yes, those are the children in the orphanage. Linus must set aside his fears and determine whether or not they're likely to bring about the end of days. Okay, so like I'm already on board. This sounds really great. It reminds me a little bit of, like, the tone of it reminds me of Jasper Fforde. If you've read any Jasper Fforde books, he does those, he does the Shades of Grey books with Thursday Next. Those are pretty well known. And he also did a book called Shades of Grey, which this actually has just really similar feel to. But so like I said, I was already on board by that point. And then it gets even better, okay? But the children aren't the only secret the island keeps. Their caretaker is the charming and enigmatic
words.
I'm so excited I can't even read. Enigmatic Arthur Parnassus, who will do anything to keep his word safe. As Arthur and Linus grow closer, long-held secrets are exposed, and Linus must make a choice: destroy a home or watch the world burn. Okay.
Sounds good.
As they grow closer, wonder what he's gonna do. I mean, there's not a lot. Not exactly, like, it's not a lot of suspense. I'm gonna spoil it and say that there is a happy ending. Don't know if the cover of the book might have tipped you off. It does look pretty cheerful.
It does. I like that though.
Boy, is it a delightful journey. Really, I can't say enough good things. It has a little bit of the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children feel to it, with the obviously peculiar children, the unidentifiable green blob, and the Antichrist and all that. But it doesn't feel like a retread. It's just sort of taking that trope, right, of the school for odd children. It's the same thing in the X-Men. right? That's
Mm-hmm.
not unusual. But he does he just does some really delightful, beautiful found family things. The romance is the most charming. It's the most charming. I just really love this book. It was so good. Um, I finished it in a day. It's on
Holy,
Cloud Library. I haven't returned it because I'm going to read it again. So, if you're interested, put your hold on now
I'm
because
gonna have
I will
to.
return it sooner or later. But it is truly charming. So if you want something, that's like light and it's going to make you feel good and, just a nice getaway from any stresses, just if you happen to have some stresses going on in your life right now,
Maybe.
maybe, whatever. It's just a really charming book. And that's the cover she showed you, The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Can't wait to read it. Okay, and the last rec we have is The Sound of Stars. Ooh, by
Again, pretty cover.
I know lots of are those the what flag is this? I know the colors.
It's like bisexual color.
There you go. The main character though is named Ellie. Oh wait, so it's by Alicia Dow. And the main character is named Ellie, and she's actually Ace, which is kind of cool because, well, like we were saying, there's a lot more literature that has different letters of the LGBTQ umbrella. And she's living on Earth after it's been taken over by some aliens called the Ilori, I think it's called.
Sure.
And she risks her life to run an illegal library because the Ilori think that they don't have any emotions, and they think that the humans' art is making them too emotional. And so they're trying to erase that. So she has an illegal library where she's giving away books. Then one day she gets found out by an alien that's kind of like a sub race of the aliens, so a lesser being of them. And he finds out that she has this library, and he's like, I won't turn you in. I'll even protect you if you can get me iPods and records because I love music. And it's like, wow. It's not as charming as I'm making it sound out, though. It is a little bit more grungy. I just love the idea and premise of it. It's a little more gritty than that, but
sure.
yeah, so she ends up scheduled for execution. Like I'm saying, it's a little more gritty, it's a little more Hunger Games. Right. And then Morris is the alien's name, and he intervenes, and then they end up on a cross-country road trip with rebellion in their sights. And that's as far as I've gotten, so I can't even tell you what the ending is. But it's really good.
Well, those aliens aren't wrong. Books can cause a lot of emotions.
As we've discovered, just describing these ones.
Just describing these books. Like, did I cry at the end of the Cerulean Sea? Yes, I did. Were they sad tears? Later. No, they were not. They were just happy, satisfied. Yes.
That's the best.
If you would write a sequel, I would be all over that.
This is a call out right now. Please write a sequel.
Please write a sequel. Yeah.
Make it a series.
Why not? I just keep adding more interesting children.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the X-Men have went on this long.
It's true. It's true. Just more like Linus and Arthur. It's very cute. It's very cute. Anyway, so this is our show, our Read This Next program. We're going to try, hopefully, to do this again, just pick a different topic and talk some more about books that are on Cloud Library and then give some personal recommendations. What I've done is taken kind of the notes from this conversation. So all of the books that we've mentioned, some resources in the stuff that I talked about, I pulled some information from different blogs or articles, and so those are all listed as well. And you can find all that on the TBPL Off the Shelf book blog. So I'll put a link to that on our Facebook page once we're all done here and we log off.
Yeah. And don't forget to check out Miss Patience's Pride Storytime next week, June 17th, 10:30 a.m. or I think it'll be up for a little while longer after that if you want to check it out. So check back here next week and listen to a cute story.
Yeah, so we are going to make this program, we'll leave it up for a little bit. So if there's someone you know who likes to read and might want some recommendations, or someone you know who is queer and might enjoy reading some stories where they're represented, then please send them our way and they'll be able to check this out on our Facebook page under videos.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm Laura.
I'm Nicole.
And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.